The moment currencies turned to ash. The 5 faces of hyperinflation. Imagine waking up one morning to find that your life savings, which yesterday were enough to buy a house, can now barely afford a single loaf of bread. Imagine your monthly salary becoming worthless the moment it hits your hand. Imagine people carrying cash not in wallets but in wheelbarrows. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. This is hyperinflation. And it has happened far more times than most people realize. We think of money as something stable and trustworthy, but history tells a different story. The worst hyperinflations didn't just destroy bank accounts. They destroyed governments, families, and empires. They burned through societies like financial wildfires and revealed just how fragile our systems truly are. Now, you will see exactly how the currencies of 5 real economies turned to ash and what it cost them. And as you listen, remember, inflation isn't always loud at first. It creeps in, it whispers, and by the time most people notice, it's already too late to escape. 1. Germany, 1923. The Weimar Republic. After World War I, Germany was drowning in debt. The Treaty of Versailles had burdened the country with over 132 billion gold marks in war reparations, a staggering amount that would have taken generations to repay. So, what did the German government do? It printed money, and lots of it. At first it seemed manageable, then prices doubled, then tripled, and then exploded. By November 1923, the German mark was virtually worthless. A loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People burned banknotes for warmth, and children built towers with stacks of currency. Middle-class families watched lifetimes of savings evaporate in weeks. The real damage here wasn't just the collapse of money, it was the collapse of trust. Once a society loses faith in its currency, everything breaks. Commerce, contracts, savings, salaries, it all disintegrates. This financial collapse paved the way for social collapse. It created the desperation and chaos that gave extremists an opening. Just a decade later, Adolf Hitler seized power, and this economic trauma was part of that dark foundation. 2. Zimbabwe, early 2000s. Facing sanctions and economic isolation, President Robert Mugabe's government launched massive land seizures that wrecked agricultural productivity. The government's response was predictable. They turned to the printing press. The spiral began once again. By 2008, Zimbabwe's inflation rate was estimated at 79.6 billion%. Prices doubled every 24 hours. The government kept adding zeros to the currency. 10 million, 100 billion, and finally, $100 trillion bills. Eventually, they gave up and switched to foreign currencies like the US dollar and the South African rand. What did it cost? Not just numbers on paper. Hyperinflation wiped out pensions, collapsed industries, and created a generation of economic refugees. Real wealth, land, skills, and hard assets was the only thing that survived. 3. Hungary, 1946. The worst in history. This case is often cited as the worst hyperinflation in recorded history. After World War II, Hungary was economically shattered. To cover war debts and reconstruction, the government began printing a currency called the pengo at an insane rate. At its peak, prices were doubling every 15 hours. The inflation rate hit 41.9 quadrillion%. That's a 4 followed by 16 zeros. The currency became so devalued that the government issued the mil pengo, 1 million pengo, and then the B pengo, 1 billion pengo. It still wasn't enough. Eventually, they abandoned the currency entirely and started over with the forint. What did they lose? Everything. Hungary's middle class was annihilated, savings accounts went to zero, and the government lost all remaining legitimacy. Hyperinflation didn't just reset the economy, it erased the past. 4. Venezuela, 2010s to present. Despite being oil-rich and resource-rich, Venezuela became a cautionary tale of political failure. Years of corruption, price controls, nationalizations, and reckless monetary policy turned one of the region's wealthiest countries into a crisis zone. The government printed money to cover deficits, fund failing programs, and maintain control. Again, inflation took off. By 2018, Venezuela's inflation rate crossed 1 million%. Imagine earning your paycheck and having to spend it that same day because it would lose half its value by the next. Supermarkets went empty and barter returned. Doctors and engineers fled the country to work as delivery drivers abroad. Just like in Zimbabwe, the government slashed zeros from the currency, but you cannot slash away the damage. Hyperinflation gutted Venezuela's economy, paralyzed its healthcare system, and turned millions of citizens into migrants. Those with physical assets or access to dollars survived. Those without did not. 5. Yugoslavia, 1990s. Following the breakup of the Soviet bloc and the violent disintegration of the